Welcome back to Chessbox Worldwide. Today I'm taking you 10 years back to witness the history that was made in 2016 between Kayonde Andrew from Zambia and GM Adly Ahmed from Egypt during the African Individual Chess Championships, which took place in Uganda at Authentic Hotel Bombo Road, Kampala. Andrew Kayonde is a Zambian chess player who is also called the AK-47 because he is consistent and understands how to convert won positions easily. He was awarded the title of International Master in 2016 after his splendid performance in the African Individual Chess Championship with magnificent wins from Grandmasters during this championship. He finished second with 6.5 out of 9 after Grandmaster Reshevsky from Egypt with 7 out of 9 points. Kayonde has won the Zambian Chess Championship 6 times and still counting. He competed for Zambia in the 2018 Chess Olympiad, where he managed to draw against the legendary Vasily Ivanchuk in the first round, who was rated over 300 points higher. Outside of chess, Kayonde Andrew obtained a master's degree in business administration from Heriot-Watt University and works as an accountant. Adly Ahmed is an Egyptian chess grandmaster who acquired his international master title in 2001 at the age of 14 at the Under-20 Chess Championship of 2004. Went on to earn his grandmaster title in 2005, making him the first Egyptian and the youngest ever African to achieve this feat. In 2006, he managed to beat the future chess world champion GM Magnus Carlsen during the Reshevsky Open, where he scored 7 out of 9 and finished second with a rating performance of 2704. He has won the African Individual Chess Championship titles 4 times. Adly holds the second highest rating in Egypt and Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the game which Kayonde Andrew was supposed to win in order to attain the IM title. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, and after knight c3, played bishop b4. So white and black, they are fighting for the dominancy of the e4 square, and in this position, queen comes to c2 can be seen, pawn e3 can be seen, and also the immediate pawn a3 trying to chase the bishop, which is on b4, and black is willing to give up the bishop pair so as to have control of the e4 square. So moves like pawn comes to b6, bishop comes to b7, and then taking control of the diagonal, pawn e3, preparing to put the bishop on d3. Black has a variety of continuations. For example, the immediate pawn c5, or even b6, putting the bishop on b7 and taking control of the diagonal, which we can see on the screen, or even short castling can also be seen in the position. But however, Adly Ahmed played short castling, and after knight comes to e2, backing up the knight which is on c3, then b6, planning to fianchetto the bishop, be put on b7 and take control of the diagonal. Pawn a3, bishop takes knight on c3, then knight can come in and take bishop on c3. Remember, black would have lost the bishop pair. That's why in this position, Adly played bishop e7, retaining the bishop pair, and we see pawn e4, because now remember knight is watching over the pawn which is on e4 and knight can't win the pawn. So after d6, stopping any further advancements, we see knight e3, opening up for the bishop to sit on d3, then short castling could be done. Then we see pawn c5, d5, trying to block the bishop which will be sitting on the b7 square, e takes and c takes d5, capturing towards the center. Adly played a6, played bishop e2, developing a piece, but however, pawn f4 should have been considered to stop any further advancements of the black side. So we see bishop comes to e2 and Adly plays b5. So Adly is planning to go ahead and play b4 so that he can try to displace the knight on c3, b4, which is a powerful move. For example, there are 2 ways on how black can go about it, either to ignore or to take the pawn. But in case black goes ahead and plays pawn takes b4, then we would see a takes b4, bishop b7, knight f5. Remember, after bishop comes to b7, the whole of this diagonal is free. That's why you see the knight can be able to sit on f5, and after rook e8, bishop e3, bishop goes to f8. Now the pawn which is on e4 is hanging. We see pawn f3, protecting the pawn, knight b d7, short castling, and after rook c8, attacking the knight which is on c3, queen d2, protecting the knight, knight goes to e5, trying to plan to put the knight on c4 and take one of the bishops, bishop d4, g6, trying to attack the knight, and after knight h6, I can tell you white has a huge advantage. That's why after b4, GM Adly played knight beat d7, ignoring other threats and bring the knight to defend the pawn, which is on c5. In case of pawn takes, then the knight was going to take the pawn so that they don't give white any passed pawn. Bishop e3, putting more pressure on c5. Knight goes to e7, planning to put the bishop on f6 and then attack the knight, which is on c3. Then we can see short castling, and after bishop comes to f6, rook comes to c1, defending the knight. c4, closing up the position, and in this position, pawn g6 should have been considered. Let's go back. After rook c1, g6 should have been considered, and after f4, c takes b4, a takes b4. In this position, black would have a comfortable position because the immediate pawn comes to h5, pawn h4, displacing the knight would be also a good move. Bishop comes to b7, rook comes c8, knight b6, knight c4. All those are moves which could be seen in the position, and this would make the game very comfortable for black to play. But after rook c1, GM played c4, bishop which is on c8, blocked by the knight which is on d7. He played knight f5. And after bishop takes c3, rook takes c3, he played knight f6, opening up for the bishop, ready to take the knight which is on f5. Let's go back. After bishop c3, Adly played knight comes to f6, but however, in case of knight comes to e5 would be a better option, and after knight g3, a5 should have been considered, giving black at least a comfortable position to play. But however, after rook takes c3, Adly played knight comes to f6, knight goes back to g3, we see a5, trying to open up the position. f4, bringing more attackers to the king side. A takes b4, a takes b4, and then in this position, GM Adly made a blunder of his life and he played rook f4. Rook takes c4. In case of b takes c4, then queen takes f4 would be a good one. That in case of queen comes to c7, rook comes to c1, attacking the pawn which is on c4, and white has a passed pawn which can always be pushed to bring havoc in the black camp. Let's go back. After rook takes c4, Adly played rook a3, attacking the bishop which is on e3. Remember also the pawn is attacking the rook which is on c4. In this position, Kayonde Andrew played like an engine. He played queen c1. For example, in case of pawn takes rook, then the queen can take the rook which is on a3. In case of rook takes bishop, then the rook can go ahead and take the bishop which is on c8. So Adly tried rook takes bishop on e3. Then Kayonde Andrew played rook takes c8. Remember, the rook is being backed up by the queen which is on c1. And after queen b6, trying to pin the rook, Kayonde Andrew played another super strong move. He played rook c6. Rook is attacking the queen which is on b6. Adly played queen s7. In this position, Kayonde played another super strong move. He gave up the rook and played rook a6. Queen takes s6, then queen takes e3. In this position, Kayonde Andrew is now a pawn up against a super GM. So he played knight c7, and after rook c1, attacking the knight. And we see that the knight squares wherever it can go, they're all awkward squares. So in this position, queen b7 should have been considered. Queen b7, then knight would go to f5, attacking the pawn which is on d6, and after rook comes d8, bishop f3, and the rest could be history, threatening to go ahead and play e5, queen comes in on d4, and all those would be hard moves to play. But after rook c1, Adly set up a trap and played rook e8, which was a blunder because he was testing to see if Kayonde was seeing the tactic. For example, if rook takes c7, then knight can take the pawn which is on d5, forking the queen and the rook, of which Kayonde Andrew played rook takes c7, and after knight takes d5, forking the queen and the rook. The GM had forgotten that he's playing the AK-47, who doesn't miss combinations in rightful squares. He played rook a7, attacking the queen. Rook can't be taken, queen can't be taken, For example, in case of knight takes e3, then rook takes s6, and the next move is that king is going to attack the knight which is here. The bishop is attacking the pawn which is on b5, and I can tell you black is busted. That's why after rook a7. In case of queen comes to c7, then in this position, even the simple pawn takes knight is working, because now even if rook takes, then the pawn can still take back the queen. Let's go back. After rook a7, the only move which could work was queen c8, of which the GM played, and Kayonde Andrew played queen d4. But however, let's go back. Queen d2 should have been considered, protecting all the pawns so that white has no compensation for his attack. But however, wanted to centralize the queen, and he played queen d4, giving up a pawn which is on f4, knight takes pawn on f4, and he played bishop f1. But however, bishop takes b5 should have been considered. For example, after knight takes f4, then bishop takes b5, attacking the rook, and in case of rook c1 check, bishop comes back on f1, and it means Kayonde Andrew would have created a passed pawn which is just ready to be pushed and win the game instantly. So after knight f4, he played bishop f1, queen g4, threatening all sorts of attacks, pushing the pawn and then trying to see how they could checkmate. Played rook comes to a3, protecting the knight which is on g3. But however, if he would have tried knight f5, and after rook comes to d8, protecting the pawn which is on d6, queen comes to e3, trying to bring it to the side where it can be exchanged. And after h6, in case of g6, then knight comes to h6, forking the king and the queen, so it means that would be bad. So h6 is forced, and after h3, queen g5, then king h2, and I can tell you Kayonde would be winning this one simply. But after queen comes to g4, he played rook a3, and we see h5 trying to bring h4 so the knight which is on g3 can move out of the way, and h3 was played. Remember, the rook which is on a3 is protecting the knight which is on g3. Queen g5 was played, and after h4, queen comes back on g4, knight f5. In case of g6, then knight can still come on h6, forking the king and the queen. But in this position, Adly played rook takes pawn on e4. In case of queen takes, then knight can come on h3 check, and then the queen can win back the queen which is on e4. But he had forgotten that he's playing the master of tactics, played knight h6 check. He was opening up for all these diagonals of the queen. For example, in case of g takes h6, then rook goes back to check the king, and after king comes to h7, queen takes rook, king g7, queen d4 check, king goes to h7, rook h8 check, and after king g6, rook g8, and black is busted. Let's go back. After knight h6, Adly played king h7, and in this position, played queen takes e4 check, and after king takes h6, he played queen f3, requesting for queen exchange. And if you look at this position, Adly was a full piece down, and in this position Adly resigned, and Kayonde Andrew became victorious. Thank you so much for watching the channel, and I wish you the best of luck in your games.